Welcome back to Business Week on Arise News. I'm joined now by news analyst Ikpongke Sotiloye to review some of our top stories in detail. Welcome to the show, Ikpongke. Great to see you this morning.
Good to see you too.
So I want to start with a story about MAN, the Manufacturing Associations of Nigeria, telling regulatory agencies not to demarket local investors. Do you think it's a bit far-fetched, given that the Dangote incident was probably the first such? Was there really a need to issue such a statement directed at regulatory agencies?
I think, should there have been a need? Maybe not, but I understand to a certain extent why they might have decided to do that. And why I say that is because of the pressure, the financial pressure that has been on the manufacturing industry for a while. You know, over the last 5 years, they've had over 50 companies, have to close down. And then you're looking at foreign companies like GSX,
GSK, some of the pharmaceutical companies.
Excuse my
Unilever,
word. P&G discontinuing their production here in Nigeria. I think that there's been a lot of pressure. And then if you recall, earlier this year, there was a news on over 7,000 job loss. So I see that there's a lot of pressure, on manufacturing, and also looking at what contribution they have to the GDP at the time. But, while you look at all of these things, I think because there are many moving parts, what I mean by that is there are three things that everyone is constantly looking at as Nigerians, which is what revenues do we get as business holders? What jobs do we make available for the citizens? And then maybe thirdly, how do we, ease out the pressure, when it comes to the availability of funds to be able to run businesses. So if off the chat, we have this refinery that you and I know that the Kaduna refinery is not up, the Port Harcourt refinery is not up, what possibilities or what do we see can happen for us as Nigerians if the Dangote refinery does work? But nonetheless, it's important that regulators do their job. Quality assurance is important. But we must also remember that we will always lend our voices, on issues so that we see that there's continuous improvement and there is adherence to all that needs to be done.
Yeah, in fact, mention must also be made about the fact that all parties, Dangote Refinery, the regulators, NNPC, all had a meeting during the week. And so I think the MAN statement came sort of alongside that happening, because this story has been developing now for about 2 weeks. But another story that's very important and highlighting the challenges in the economy is the incredible inflation in the price of food items. You saw my read there earlier on the top of the show. Tomatoes, over 300% increase in prices. Yam tubers, beans, rice, stable foods as well. These are incredible statistics coming out of food, which is a basic necessity for any society. What exactly is going on, and how are people able to live and survive?
Let's be honest here. I don't know how everybody is going through all of this, because if you look at even an average Nigerian knows the price of yam. Everybody knows the price of yam. Everybody's hearing about the prices of tomatoes. These increases, we saw them coming. And over the last couple of years, we have seen these increases. I know that the federal government have put out a stimulus of 430 billion naira to support our states, just because of all of this pressure. But you and I know that it's not enough at this time. A lot of Nigerians would have preferred that, this stimulus would have maybe gone through the banks. I know that the banks currently have about 55 million active users, just the drive by CBN over the last couple of months to ensuring that we have active accounts that have BVN and NIN. I know Nigerians would have preferred that support from the federal government to kind of cushion this effect. Because whether we like it or not, we know what the last 8 years have been, in running the country, and all of the many interventions, by the CBN. I know that there's been a lot of work going on in there, but we have to kind of balance the effect and kind of ease all of those pressures with the fuel. Also, lastly, I'd like to say that the insecurity is not helping, because we know where our food produce come from. And by the time it gets to all of the different locations in Nigeria, the prices are going up with the cost of fuel. So I would say every Nigerian is obviously, under a lot of pressure to ensuring that they can put food on their tables. Look at the price of eggs. that has increased significantly over 300%. We need to look at all of these things and then navigate it. But I think primarily the federal government needs to come up with more creative ideas to cushioning this effect for the Nigerian person.
Yes, indeed. Looking at our charts there, food price inflation, food inflation was over 40%. Rural inflation, which is also telling, which kind of feeds into that, was, over 32%. So quite a grim picture there, but we're hoping for some price stability soon. Netflix, this again just ties into Netflix is probably feeling that pinch in some ways, but I'm actually trying to make sense of this subscription hike because of the business model. What really accounts for a 40% subscription hike in Netflix fees? Does Netflix have physical operations here, offices with overheads, etc.? I'm trying to understand, is this a reflection of inflation? Because a 40% increase is quite significant.
The co-CEO, right, Kiri Peters, didn't necessarily focus on inflation. He made a lot of emphasis around the strategy of Netflix at the time. But one thing I would like to say as regards this, this conversation on Netflix is that Nigeria isn't the only country that had a hike in July. Europe did have a hike. More like the United Kingdom had a hike. Canada had a hike, but there have been different rates as determined by our different subscriptions in different continents. And you know how the Nigerian populace is. And also, there are several partnerships, with Nigeria and Africa. But primarily they have focused on, they're trying to have this more creative movies, third-party programs available for us. But they're also saying these increases, these programs available would obviously impact the cost of subscription. But I would say off the chart, Nigeria, you're not the only one. You're not the only country that got a hike, but we're quite a unique market. If you look at it generally, they have over 238 million subscribers. Of that populace... Around the world. Yes. 79 million. And it's constantly been an increase between the EMEA market and America and Canada. And when you drill it down, Nigeria is a huge market for them. So for strategy and obviously ensuring that they give us they are more creative. They say they want to be the best global.
But I'm just wondering how demand inelastic a Netflix subscription is. If you look at, we talked about food, and if you look at household expenditure every month, you have your utilities, you have probably your phone bills, then you have your food, which is probably the most expensive of that basket of household expenditure monthly. Do you see subscriptions really up there?
Watching Netflix is an escape.
Escape from the challenges of Nigeria,
And that is really the issue. That's what you see post the pandemic for every single individual. When you're done with all of the hustle and bustle of dealing with the cost of school fees, the cost of fuel, the cost of maintenance and all of your different items at home, you just want to relax. A lot of people have said, oh no, I'm not going to subscribe. But I find that by the time it's the next 2-3 weeks, you just find yourself move from the 4,000 to the 6,000 subscription and just watch what you need to watch. But one thing that is good is they're focused on their customers. So they're opening up from August 3rd, a wider range of, accessible programs that you can read. So let's see how that turns out.
I guess it must be said there are different subscription plans, but also we need to steep this analysis in reality, because the reality is for a majority of Nigerians, Netflix is not even on the radar. So I think it's important to put it in the context of, the bottom of the pyramid. But let's talk again about still, global companies, luxury services. The world's largest luxury goods company, LVMH, has slumped by 4%. It seems like the world and the high-end market is also feeling the global economic pinch. What do you make of this data?
Their first quarter, they had obviously a dive of 12% of their revenue. But the main issue here is over the last 2 years, there's been a decline. And the focus in all of the different distributions they have, from the fashion and leather, their perfume, have seen increases. But the wine and spirit has consistently seen a decline over the last 2 years. And when they sit down and speak about these things, they constantly say that, people are not happy. And when people are happy, they get to drink.
Right.
And with obviously the focus issues that have been on in France and Europe generally, the market hasn't been nice to them. So that decline has been in wine and spirits, and they are feeling like because people aren't happy and they've seen so much pressure on mortgages, so much pressure. You know, there've been different conversations on inflation in London and in, you know, the wider Europe. But when you look at what's happening with wine and spirits, you'd find that people aren't drinking as they used to.
Yeah, indeed. And in fact, LVMH has come under fire recently over allegations that some of its luxury goods brands were using child labor in their value chain. There was a case that came up last month. So I wonder whether that's also part of, well, that was second quarter actually,
yes.
But they might still feel the pinch of that.
They might still feel the pinch of that, even though they are, you know, they are really in the Olympics. They have a huge store and they've made a bit of some money, but in the wine and spirit they haven't, and they really feel people aren't drinking like they used to. So we'll see how, but looking at it, that has happened for the last 2 years. They're already emphasizing that, you know, that this is what's going to happen. And I know they're just watching to see what the next quarter gives their books and revenue. Yeah, well, between Nigeria's inflation and global luxury goods, it's been a great chatting with you as always, Ikpongke Sotiloye, news analyst. Thanks for joining us.